1480 KBMS.
I got flavor. That's why I got that job.
Good morning, Vancouver and Portland. This is Angela. About 19 minutes to 12 on this beautiful Sunday morning. And as promised, I'll be talking with someone regarding the I-5 Rose Quarter Improvement Project. Good morning, James. How you doing?
Good morning, Angela. It's such a great thing to hear your voice. We haven't talked in a few years now. So, glad to be able to talk to you.
It's great talking to you. Give the community an idea regarding what's happening with the I-5 Rose Quarter Improvement Project. When is it going to be started? And who's going to be part of building this wonderful area?
I'd like to give just a little historical perspective. Many of the folk who live in Portland probably remember the Banfield, the I-84 going out to Gresham, and the highway that leads from Portland all the way into Hillsborough.
Mm-hmm.
And so, over the last 25, 30 years, there have been these major projects, and people, maybe some of the listeners don't remember when I-5 was actually instituted in around the Rose Quarter, and a lot of houses and black people were displaced, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so at the end of the day, this is another project that's coming online now to expand that initial I-5 project to widen that highway. I don't know if people noticed or not, but but I've noticed that the traffic has just gotten crazy.
Yeah.
From if you're downtown Portland, you can't get over to Vancouver, and et cetera, et cetera. And so this I-5 widening project has been in the works for several years now, and finally we're getting ready to come online. And I just basically want, your listeners to know that in none of these building projects have black people benefited at all.
Wow.
In fact, for many, many years, we have paid taxes for the highway and so on, et cetera. And we received virtually no return on the investment that the state and the feds make in the widening of these highways. And conversely, the white population benefits greatly, with jobs, with building, with land acquisition, et cetera, and et cetera. And so this time, however, God has blessed us with a contractor who understands the great value of how these projects could benefit our community and give us an opportunity to raise up and push down some of these negative statistics that we have. Black people have a triple the unemployment rate of white people. Our home ownership is in the floor, in the bottom of just about everything. Our net worth, black people's net worth, while white people is only about 30% of what white people have. And so this I-5 project, believe me, will have some infusion of resources back into that community. So I'm going to stop there and say this thing is supposed to kick out for real in 2023. However, next year is going to be the run-up, and a lot of preparatory work is going to be done. And man, I'm really excited about the prospects of our community benefiting from this thing. So that's kind of that in a nutshell.
Okay.
And of course, this is our irony of it. There's some pushback against groups who want to talk about the environmental impact of fumes and so forth.
Right.
But if people took a closer look, they would see that we won't be having electrical cars in any full measure, maybe 4 or 5, maybe as many as 7 or 8 years out. So the electrical car thing is not going to happen, and people are going to be driving their cars. I don't care what anybody says. And so, you know what I mean. And, there's some pushback from, the environmental people, the left. And all I want to ask is, where were they when, they did the I-5 project, and we don't hear them out in Westland talking about environmental issues to the point where they're going to block the economic capacity. So they're Johnny-come-lately to that whole idea. And, you know, of course, black people want to breathe clean air like everybody else.
I hear you.
We also want to be stakeholders in an economy that gives an opportunity to live like they do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the long and short of it, Angela.
When they decided to make this decision, my biggest question is how the black community are going to be involved to help with this expansion. That's the biggest thing, especially with our young kids coming up.
Yeah, it's going to be a real challenge. You know, after 40, 50 years of keeping us out, excluding us in this whole construction area, it's going to be a challenge to be able to bring black people online to actually do the work. Now, just so that you can be real clear about it, there's a minority contractor who got a large share of this piece. His name is Jeff Moreland, who owns Raimore Construction. And, you know, I wouldn't be jumping up and down about this project if it wasn't for the historical record that this guy has done in terms of involving our people in construction projects. I think the largest African-American contractor in the state now. And you can look at his workforce out on the ground. You can see people that look like us in, you know, all the way up the career area, from the lowest person in labor all the way up to the management end of what he's trying to do. And I would just encourage your listeners to Google Raimore Construction and look at their workforce and call them and ask them about, you know, the work that's being done by him now. You know, it's a carryover from the light rail project, that interstate light rail project that he did, TriMed. They made great progress, in including people of color and companies like Raimore. Actually, that's where I did most of my work, is through TriMed, as opposed to the ODOT people. ODOT has had a terrible record of including us, but this time, you know, after the George Floyd incident and the whole issue around restorative justice, it's kind of like, you know, Angela, I'm old enough to remember what happened in the Watts riot and all that stuff way back when. So, you know, there's a new atmosphere, a new attitude about how we're going to include black people. And you know, I don't know how long it's going to last, but we need to take advantage of this atmosphere of people willing to do something to really acknowledge the you know, the deficits and the racism and the discrimination that's happened all over the country.
I hear you.
So we have a chance now to benefit from that atmosphere with this project. I always like to tell people the stars are kind of aligned because we got a contractor who wants to do the right thing.
I hear you.
And let me stop and say, just because you have a black contractor don't mean that they're going to be fair and treat us any better than all these white guys out here. I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but just because you have somebody who has black skin don't mean they're going to be fair and really treat our people any better than the white contractors are. And oftentimes, got a plane going over here. Oftentimes, you know, the white contractors use black contractors as front companies, and they'll funnel the money to the white contractors, and when they say they're going to really try to use minorities, and actually the real money, and more importantly, the opportunities and the skills and all that comes with having experience stays in the hands of the white community. This time it could be different on this I-5 project if we you know, pay attention and take advantage of this opportunity.
I hear.
Does that make sense to you?
No, it makes a lot of sense, but because I kind of like, you know, whatever recall, you know, whatever with projects being started, you know, when I first moved down here in the late 80s and coming into the 90s and stuff, a lot of projects and stuff were being started, and there was a fight because they weren't hiring a lot of black contractors. And so there were, you know, I do remember that fight. And I know that you guys won. you know, so I mean, but that's kind of like, you know, with the federal government and even with the state governments, you know, how they view minority contractors and stuff like that. So I mean, but I want to take this opportunity to say that you know, it's not about contracting. You know, there are other
for example, they should make sure that you all, I'm talking about KBMS and other radio stations and the black media, get a piece of this pie. You know, in terms of their recruitment, in terms of advertising, in terms of everything that comes down the line relative to you all's commitment to the community. And this is an opportunity for you all to put your proposals out there, your plans, and not ask, but demand that you have involvement in this I-5 project. Because we got them where we want them. Got them. You feel me on that?
No, I feel you on that one, James, and stuff like that. So we're going to continue this conversation. I'm going to say thank you. I know it's been a while, but, you know, you are an insightful person. I've always thought that. You're the history person that I kind of like know. You know, so... Yeah. And we want to make sure that OPO and, you know, people, the ownership of KBMS, you know, we want to acknowledge you all's history and what you meant to our community. And without y'all, I don't know where we would be honestly, you know, and especially you on Sunday morning and that program, the music and keeping us all spiritually alive and everything. And thank you so much for that, okay? Hey, you are so welcome, James, and you know, we'll keep the conversation going, but hey, you enjoy the rest of your day, okay?
You too. Take care.
You too.
All right.
Bye-bye. That's Mr. James Posey. And the conversation, we're going to continue the conversation. The person I was going to be talking with first, well, I'll be doing it after this break. So keep it tuned here, the 1480 KBMS. Yes, that was Mr. Kurt Carr with his single entitled, "We Gotta Put Jesus Back," that as promised. Well, good afternoon, DeAngelo. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Tell my listening audience how you are involved in the I-5 Rose Quarter Improvement Project that's going to be starting pretty soon.
So I will be working on the I-5 Rose Quarter Project as the chief of staff for the executive Raimore team, and I will also be leading the charge in regards to community engagement, and I will be assisting with workforce development as well as we get to those stages closer to the beginning of the project.
How did you come about getting involved in this particular project, but probably other projects within the community to put a spotlight on helping people in the black community to become part of these kinds of projects?
How did I get involved? Well, I'm a third generation or Portlander. Community engagement in general has always been a large part of my family. You know, my mother has worked in the albino community for the past 30 plus years for Albino Head Start, and she's always worked with marginalized and discriminated families. She's always had community engagement very near and dear to her heart. My father has worked in the albino community for the past 50 years in construction. My father and my uncle actually both worked on the Rose Garden. It's funny, they told me a story where when the venue actually opened, they were still putting chairs in the ground. So I've always had it kind of running in my blood. In regards to this project, I've always had a very strong connection to the albino community. Like I said, I've lived here my entire life. So for me, I was able to get involved just because I understand the trials and tribulations that we as people have faced in this corridor, historically, you know, in the past as well as present. And I see an opportunity to help change the narrative and do business differently, do business better, more intentionally for our people.
How are you to go about to make that, how things and stuff are going to be a little bit different, especially for the younger generation coming up?
Well, what I've done, what I like to do, and what I think is very important for people to do, is to understand the truth and do research and understand how we got to this point. So it's very important for younger people in general, or I say specifically, to engage in construction, because you don't necessarily have to go to college and put yourself in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt to earn a living wage. You know, you can work in construction at 18 years old as a laborer, and you can start off making $50,000, which is, you know, great money for an 18-year-old. You know, and you don't have to put yourself in debt. You're learning how to work, and you're getting paid to learn how to work. You know, in 3 to 5 years, you can journey out, and you make, I believe, on average, $35, $40 an hour. So you start in the trades at 18, you journey out at 21 to 23, and you're making, you know, $70,000 a year, and you're only 23 years old. Now you have access to, you know, real financial stability. You have access to a career that is not contingent on the economy, because infrastructure work is always going to be important. So you have a real opportunity to have some financial stability very early, and you have a chance to learn some skills that will transcend just construction. You can learn how to be a project manager, for example. So if you decide construction is not your bag, you know, you can take those skills that you learned and start your own business or go be a project manager. So it's important that younger people understand the opportunities that are in construction, that it's more than just, you know, getting dirty. You know, you can really make a real living wage, make a real living, a real career out of it if you give it a chance.
Contact a contractor, you know, and ask them, you maybe somehow mentor them to where they can get a feel. Is that possible, you know, for them to do that?
It's absolutely possible. One thing that Raimore does very specifically is we make sure to hire, you know, we hire for us, by us. We're always looking for, you know, young black people that are just interested in the trades, you know, whether you want to be a laborer, an engineer, a project manager, you know, or if you don't even know what you want to do, maybe you have no idea what you want to do. We always encourage people to, you know, work with both us as well as other construction companies around the city. You know, POIC is not necessarily a construction company, but they do teach young black people how to work in the trade. So we encourage anybody, not necessarily just black people, but we encourage anybody, especially black people, though, give it a shot, because construction is very important to us historically. And I think a lot of people don't understand the historical significance of construction to our people.
Well, how do you think, is there a way maybe for this project to put a spotlight on the historic factor of African American or, you know, black men and even the women to look into construction?
Well, the important thing about this project is having, you know, a black contractor sitting at the table making those conversations.
Right.
So this isn't like your general white-led project where you have a lot of people that are working to do work in, you know, for example, black community, but they don't have any intentionality about bringing black people in or even having black people understand why it's important. You know, you have a black contractor that understands the historical significance of this project, but also understands what's been done to us as a people, and really bridging that gap, because a lot of our younger generation doesn't understand, you know, again, the importance of construction to our people. So you have a contractor who has real intentionality about talking about the historical connotations of this project and why it's important that we have more black people, more black workforce engagement for this project. So there's definitely a spotlight on it, and there's going to continue to be a spotlight on it as long as we're in the driver's seat. We're going to be in the driver's seat for the whole project.
Well, I hear it. One of the questions that I've been kind of looking at and been thinking about, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you, when you talk about restorative justice, what does this project look like, and what does restorative justice look like to you?
So I'll start with restorative justice on this project. Restorative justice on this project, it really starts with restoring our community through access to actual economics that will continue to drive this country. You know, it's about bringing us all up through access to living wage jobs that will arm our people with the skills and the income to eventually branch off and start our own businesses in the trade. You know, we want to develop an ecosystem that's made for us and by us, that's not contingent on white benevolence and nonprofits like our people have been sold historically, but an actual business core that allows us to support each other financially. You know, there's nothing more fulfilling than having the ability to hire your own people and have it so we as people no longer have to scramble for crumbs, because we can all sit at the table, we can all eat together, we can feed one another and learn to trust each other again through business and the real community conversations, and heal from our generational traumas by working with one another. In regards to restorative justice, to me, I believe that before you can restore anything else, you have to restore the people. And so, without going into the nitty-gritty of it, our people have been disrespected for generations. They have been historically disenfranchised and marginalized. And so restorative justice to me is simply about restoring the people. Right now, we have a community that is been divided internally and like a monolith externally.
I hear you.
And we have a people that in a lot of ways have fallen into the social justice pitfalls, and as a result have lost focus of the issues that plague our community specifically, in favor of those that impact others. So restorative justice to me looks like Black people sitting at the table with one another, having the real conversation that we need to have, historically about the impacts to our community and how we've been forced in this perpetual survival state, like this crabs in a barrel mentality. Having the tough dialogue and exposing our pain to one another while also building one another up. Acknowledging how we were choked out of any financial or economic opportunity and beginning to work together to build with each other. I know that a lot of people talk about how Tulsa was destroyed, but not very many people talk about how Tulsa was actually created.
Right.
We had access to an economic resource. There was, I believe it was oil. And so you have a gentleman who goes to buy land in Oklahoma, which at the time was in Indian territory.
Right.
And, he's going out to go work, and he's bringing that money back to the community. And so what he did is, with that economic resource, he brought in, Black grocery stores, Black barbershops, Black banks, Black businesses in general, the kind of things that keep the community going. And so with those economics and with that community, we built a place where we could not be choked out economically and a place where we could not be gentrified. So we have to restore the people through economic empowerment as well as acknowledgement of our historical traumas and how in a lot of ways we have participated in our own betrayal and having those tough conversations. And so when we restore the people through these actions, through the kingdom principles where if I win, we all win, the community will follow, and then everything else will follow, after that.
Wow.
So that's what restorative justice means to me.
Wow. For a young person, you can teach a lot of us older people a lot. I want to say thank you.
No, thank you.
So when they are looking you to really kick off this project?
Well, we are currently in the first year of a 2-year pre-construction process.
Okay.
So initially we were looking at, I believe, I don't remember the exact month, but it was sometime in 2022. There's been a community conversation where they've been choosing, which cap or lid to put over the highway. And I guess to explain what a cap or a lid is, in a nutshell, what they want to do is they want to build an overpass above the freeway with the I-5, 405, and I guess all these freeways kind of merge.
Right.
And they want to make it so they can actually connect the community that was displaced and destroyed by the original I-5 expansion. So it's just like a layer on top. But, there was a community decision where there was an option chosen that will result in another 10 to 12 month delay. So we're probably not going to we probably won't see anything until maybe 2023. Although I hope, and I very sincerely hope that we get boots to the ground sooner than later.
Wow. DeAngelo, thank you for giving us such insightful information and educating, us, especially me, and, whatever. Keep up the good work. Yes, you are younger than me, but you know what? You have an old soul.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. That's Mr. DeAngelo. And like I said, we're going to continue this conversation regarding this big project. But in the meantime, you're going to hear from New Direction with their single entitled, I've Got Favor. So keep it tuned here to 1480 KBMS.
Favor, I got favor.